All right, Pluto versus Gonggong. Or we should say Gonggong versus Pluto, since Pluto is on the right. But here we are, the battle of the Kuiper Belt dwarf planets. And they're both dwarf planets, even though some of you out there still consider Pluto a regular planet. It was a planet since 1930 when it was discovered, but then it became a dwarf planet in 2007. And many people think Pluto is the largest dwarf planet, but then again, some people say Eris is larger than Pluto. I'll show you a little comparison of that in a minute. But anyway, getting back to Gonggong, the one thing unique about Gonggong, it's the first major body in the solar system that has a Chinese name, Gonggong, which is the god of the sea in Chinese mythology. So let me write. Let's put our pen over here. Get our pen ready. So over here, we know this is Pluto, and we'll talk about Pluto's surface in a minute. And this is Gonggong, which has a special symbol, Chinese symbol. Let's write it. Attempt to write it anyway. Gonggong. And something like that. So this is Gonggong. Gonggong. Actually, we should have a capital G. Make it a capital G. Gonggong. And of course, we know Pluto has 5 moons, Charon being its biggest moon. But Gonggong has a moon too. And I'll write it over here. It's pronounced Shonling. Maybe pronouncing that wrong. If there's anyone out there that knows how it's pronounced. But I think it's pronounced Shonling. And Shonling, getting back to the mythology there, was the minister to Gonggong, like an aide to Gonggong. And Pluto, we know, is the Roman god of the underworld, the god of the dead, and all of its planets have that theme also. So the other moons, I should say, like Styx, the river and the underworld, Styx, and then we have Nyx, and of course Charon, the largest of the, very close to the size of Pluto, and then we have Kerberos, put it over here, Kerberos, and we're missing one. What's one is missing? Hydra. That's it, Hydra. So these are the moons of Pluto, the 5 moons of Pluto, and there's the 1 moon of Gonggong. Right, and let me just clear this out, because if we're looking at Pluto, New Horizon gave us this picture of Pluto in 2015, and New Horizon's out there in the Kuiper Belt, and if you look at Pluto, it looks like it was put together by some artist from MoMA. I mean, it's just unique. It has this red here, which we'll talk about. You see it in Gonggong also. It has that reddish color. And Pluto over here looks like someone took spackle and just tried to fix a hole right over here, like trying to fix some hole in Pluto. So very unique, Pluto. So let's talk about the distance away. So Pluto's about 3 billion miles away. And again, Pluto has a weird orbit, and so does Gonggong. So it does get much closer. And Gonggong was saying roughly about 8 billion miles away. And when we talk about Pluto's orbit, at one point back in 1979, Pluto was actually closer to the sun than Neptune. And that lasted for 20 years because that's how weird Pluto's orbit is. And in about 230 years, Neptune will be further out than Pluto again. So if you want to save the date on that. Now, if we're looking at, let's clear this out, and we'll talk about the diameter of both planets. Clear that out. So if we look at the diameter of Pluto, it's about 1,473 miles, which makes it about half the United States. So from New York to, let's say, St. Louis, you can fit Pluto. And Gonggong, it's about 760 miles wide. There we go. Gonggong and Pluto. Now, I talked about this reddish color, and let me clear this out. This reddish color from Pluto and from Gonggong may be caused by these organic compounds called tholins. And what tholins are is, and again, what happens is UV radiation from the sun, UV, ultraviolet rays, from the sun, and cosmic rays from the sun. Cosmic rays are just highly charged protons. And when they're bombarding the atmosphere, and they're interacting with these tholins, they can cause this reddish appearance that you see on both planets. Of course, scientists say they may be responsible for that on both planets because they're raining down on the surface. They're interacting also with methane. So if I list some of the surface of Gonggong, we're looking at maybe a solid ice, solid water ice, and methane. Same on Pluto because you could have methane on Pluto and carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, I should say. Carbon monoxide, not CO2, but just CO, carbon monoxide. But the majority of Pluto, about 98% of Pluto, would be made of nitrogen. And not nitrogen gas, but solid nitrogen. Solid nitrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. So it gives us this rich color spectrum. And Pluto does have an atmosphere. It's kind of a bluish atmosphere. So if you were on Pluto, you would probably see, a very light blue, kind of grayish blue on the planet. Because it does have a thin atmosphere. The symbol of Pluto, by the way, it's like this, has a P with an L. And that's because in 1930, Percival Lowell, or Percival Lowell, if you want to pronounce it that way, discovered it. So that's the symbol they gave for Pluto. They don't usually give symbols anymore for planets. And if you happen to go to Pluto, the temperatures on Pluto can go anywhere between negative 375 degrees Fahrenheit to maybe negative 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and even colder on Gonggong, maybe close to maybe 380 degrees Fahrenheit to over 420 degrees Fahrenheit around that area. So it's much colder on Gonggong. But if you were on Pluto and you wanted to jump on Pluto, let's say you just wanted to play basketball or anything, you could probably jump 25 feet in the air. 25 feet in the air on Pluto. Whereas on Gonggong, you could probably even go further. You could probably go 40 feet in the air. And not just jump, but you can hang up there. You can hang up there for a couple of seconds, maybe 5 or 6 seconds. It's almost like you're flying if you can get to Pluto or Gonggong. So just to review, we'll clear this out. We know that, again, Gonggong is the first celestial body to have a Chinese name. We know it has a surface of water ice. Let's just write it one more time. It has water ice. And it has methane. And we know that these thalons are interacting with cosmic rays and the methane to create this reddish color. And it has a rocky core, just like Pluto. Whereas Pluto can have the same thing, but its surface is more nitrogen, which is a solid nitrogen. It does have a mantle of water, possibility of ice water, and a solid core. It also has methane on its surface. Also has thalons interacting with it, causing this red. And it also has carbon monoxide on it and in the atmosphere. And we know that it has a bluish gray atmosphere. And it's almost like twilight on Earth, probably even darker than that. All right, that's Pluto versus Gonggong, these two Kuiper Belt dwarf planets.